I don't see myself ever fully retiring. I'd love to work as an entrepreneur with my son at some point, if that's something he's interested in, because I have the type of brain that needs to stay occupied, because when it's idle is when this kind of real negativity, this real serious negativity starts to creep in.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Jonathan Beskin, who shares his journey from struggle to successful entrepreneur and the lessons he learned along the way. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day, to have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want, to be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote comes from Anthony DeMello. We've had a couple episodes with the president of his foundation on. If you are not happy, you have been trained to blame yourself, not your programming, not your cultural and inherited ideas and beliefs. We're going to chat about that today with our guest because he had some programming and some cultural and inherited ideas from where he grew up. But in spite of that, highly successful. And then we talk about how he deals with that with his kids. At the end of the day, we have to overcome ourselves, create the success we want, let go of those limiting beliefs from childhood, and understand that we can be successful regardless of what others may think about us or how they think we could or couldn't be. So just learn to let it go. Our guest is Jonathan Beskin. He is a serial entrepreneur. He built his first company, a women's lifestyle subscription box, and he took it to over $60 million in under 5 years. He's also an investor in multiple private companies and startups. He's been featured twice in the prestigious Inc. 5000. He speaks a lot about how he has created that success. Let's meet Jonathan and learn from him. Welcome to Richer Soul, Jonathan Beskin. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
And I am excited to learn from you. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Well, I had kind of a tough childhood. I don't have a lot of positive memories. And when I look at kind of a trajectory of my life, it's definitely been more positive of late, and a lot I take away. But as far as money, I don't really remember learning much in school about money. And I grew up in a wealthy area without as much as kind of the other kids. So I grew up in an area called Boca Raton, Florida, which is kind of an older money, generational wealth type community. And I had a single mom who was a teacher. So she would work every day from about 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. And I spent a lot of time alone. I was an only child, and my dad really wasn't involved in my life. And as far as that's related to money, I just didn't really ever have a lot of money. I started working. My first job was at Publix, a large grocery store here in South Florida. And ever since I was 14, I've been working.
Nice. So school didn't teach you about money, and I'm guessing your mom didn't teach you about money, or family members.
Not in any way that I would consider sophisticated or how to, manage it. And I feel like it's broad, but no, I don't recall ever getting any formal education or even really having any goals towards money or what I wanted to do or what I wanted to achieve with money when I was kind of a younger person.
So what was it like? I mean, because Boca Raton is a pretty nice area. What's it like living there, but not having the ability to do what the other kids did?
It was tough. I was made fun of a lot. I was called things like trailer trash. I never drove as nice of a car as anyone. I never really felt like I fit in. And my book actually starts off with me getting beat up in front of like my whole school when I was in high school because I kind of ran my mouth off. I was very insecure. I acted out a lot and I got myself into trouble both with other kids and that type of situation. I got myself into disciplinary trouble at school. I went through, hospitalization as an adolescent for mental illness, kind of severe anxiety and depression. So it wasn't easy. And now it's kind of come full circle because now I'm a parent in the same community of Boca Raton, and I have an almost 15-year-old son that's growing up, fortunately for him, in a much different way than I did. I still harbor a lot of animosity towards a lot of these proverbial people that I feel like treated me a certain way, and it's tough because I don't want to think of my son as like one of these people because now he's one of the haves as opposed to the have-nots because of stuff that I've done in my life. It's tough, but it was really a challenging time for me throughout middle school, high school back then.
So how do you kind of walk that balance with your son to make him feel comfortable in that type of an environment, but at the same time prevent him from becoming one of that type of people?
It's definitely a challenge, and it's something that I've tried to be thoughtful about because it is something that's important to me that my son doesn't behave in a way that I feel like people treated me or have some of the same thought process. While at the same time, that it's kind of two sides of the equation that I really want to be able to take care of him, and I want to, take him on ski vacations, and we have a boat and we love going on the boat. He can drive my boat and did things that I didn't get to do when I was a child. But I really have tried to get him involved in my business as much as possible. He's really not that interested. He's very embarrassed by me, embarrassed by the way I dress, what I do, the way I speak. Nothing at the age he's at is really a message that's getting through. My intentions are definitely in the right place with how I'd like that to be, but I feel like kids that age, from my perspective, are very influenced by their peers. And unfortunately, a lot of his peers, I live in a community in Boca Raton that's a gated community with very large estate style homes. And all the kids in here that he's very close with come from families with means and drive nice cars and go on nice vacations. So that's not what I was surrounded with, but that's what he's surrounded with. So it's kind of a work in progress.
All 15-year-old boys think that way about their dads.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters income level or whatever. They're trying to build their independence. And I just know, seeing so many people go through like immigrant journeys or go from poverty to wealth, that it creates this second level of friction, which how much do you do for your kid? How do you teach them grit? How do you find that balance between the two? Seeing what it was like and then saying, I don't want my kids to kind of be like that. And also the entitlement attitude as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I think entitlement is really a key word, and there's a lot of that, and even that. I've even found that for myself that I went from experiencing kind of having nothing, growing up with nothing, really in my early career as a working professional. I didn't have much. I didn't actually start my kind of life changing company until I was in my mid to late 30s. So I, sometimes need to even catch myself the way that I'm speaking, because now that I do have more means, it's easy to, get into a place where you feel more entitled, and ultimately, I feel like I'm a nice, genuine, generous person, and I have a chip on my shoulder, and sometimes I have like a bad attitude automatically right off the bat towards individuals that didn't have to work as hard, or came from family money, or joined a family business. But I found that sometimes those are just as nice, just as friendly, just as genuine and generous people. But I just have this built-in animosity towards these proverbial people. The frustrating thing is that really these people are so meaningless in my life at this point, and a lot of it goes back to high school and how I was treated. So I do think as I'm getting older, I'm about to be 43. My birthday is next week. I feel like I'm trying my best to let as much of that go and just be happy, because ultimately it'll never be enough. I mean, I could keep achieving, I've had a company that's had some publicity around it. I wrote a book with some publicity, but it'll never be enough, and I'll still be that little kid trying to prove to these people that I've made something. When I think ultimately it's more important for me to be happy, for my son to be happy, for my family, which isn't that large, to be happy, and that's really in my life what I'm trying to work towards.
And that was going to be the question. And I think you've answered it is, did those early um, experiences carry through into your adult life? And it sounds like it did. And it sounds like you're still working through some of them and trying to make those changes. And it's not easy. At least you're aware of it. So, that's the step one is being aware that you even have certain money beliefs or attitudes. A lot of people just go through life and they're asleep. They don't even notice any of this stuff. They they're stuck in who they believe they are, and they don't believe they can change. And it sounds like you've actually been able to make the change.
Yeah, well, it's easy for me to articulate how I want to be. Executing that every day in the way that I think in my thought process is really not easy. So I would say it's definitely a work in progress. I think that some positive things have come out of it, because I think if I did not have that chip on my shoulder, if I did not have that me against the world mentality, there were lots of people with the particular company that I started that could have done the same thing, that had tried the same exact idea. This is a business with no barriers to entry, that people could start for under $2,000. So I was willing to make sacrifices, and I wanted to change my life so bad that I was going to do anything I could to make it happen.
And it sounds like your early experiences created the grit to be able to persevere where others won't.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that I didn't have anything to begin with, even at the time I started my business, and I was just willing to figure things out. I mean, I came from a background in financial services when I scaled a business that had to do with social media digital advertising, which I knew absolutely nothing about. But I taught myself everything I needed to know, and really created, generationally changing situation based on that. But I really did make a lot of sacrifices. So I stopped watching TV. I kind of became a ghost. I didn't hang out with the same people. I didn't go out with friends, and took a very disciplined approach to it. And I do have a lot of discipline. I used to be a serious marathon runner. prior to having the business. So when I want to do it, and it really became an obsession for me. And that's something else that I talk about in the book. I don't want to like skip ahead anything here, but it just is top of mind right now that I still have these symptoms that I've always had my whole life of severe anxiety and depression. And what I learned that I was able to do, particularly through building the company, was how I can channel that energy of this rumination, of this tree branching, of these kind of symptoms of anxiety and turn it into something positive. So I could preempt what the competition was doing. So I can, get ahead and be as aggressive as possible. And that's ultimately, I think, what led to the success.
Nice. So, what inspired you to write the book Unlikely Millionaire?
Least likely millionaire. And the subtitle is How to Succeed When Everyone Expects You to Fail. So I think, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that came from nothing, that started off in kind of an impoverished background and built a successful company. One of the things that's unique about my story is I'm very open and transparent about mental illness, about how I was hospitalized both as an adolescent and as an adult prior to starting this business. And I think I want to inspire people. This is going to embarrass my 15-year-old son even more. But a couple of years before I decided to write the book, I found TikTok. And at the time when I started my companies in 2016, really the foundational place where you wanted to cultivate a community was on Instagram. This is before kind of the evolution of TikTok. And I started to post on myself personally, kind of my entrepreneurial story, following some of the native trends and sounds on TikTok. And I had multiple videos go viral. And this is just me in the TikTok format telling others in their algorithm how I built a company, how I started with nothing. And I got incredible feedback. So there were multiple videos with over 1 million views. I started to hear from lots of people throughout the world and throughout the US that they wanted to hear more. And that was really the initial inspiration behind writing a book and telling my story about, not only for people, the book does include some actionable advice. It's really a memoir, but there is actionable advice for people that want to start a company, an e-commerce business, any type of company, or make meaningful changes in their life when they really feel helpless or counted out. And there were also a lot of people, similar to a lot of other, entrepreneurs that told me all the reasons why this was never going to work. My specific idea, my having no background in this. And I really feel like I defied a lot of conventional wisdom. I mean, the company has done over 80 million in revenue in 7 years, and I've never raised money. I was told that I had to raise money. I was told that I could not scale a business where the consumer was women. And I'm a guy. And a lot of people thought it was a joke. But fortunately, it worked out, but it wasn't without a lot of hard work and sacrifice.
And why did you think you were least likely? Or why is that kind of the title?
Yeah. I think, and it really comes in with the subtitle, How to Succeed When Everyone Expects You to Fail, because no one that had known me, I was kind of literally voted least likely. It was like a joke of an award, kind of a very embarrassing thing in high school, voted least likely to succeed, or voted, they called it at the time, the guy who's going to end up selling newspapers on like Glades Road in Boca Raton, if anyone listening is familiar with this area. But that happened to me, and people counted me out. And one of the main people that did was my own father, and that told me that I was not going to achieve anything. So it's one thing for, rude individuals in high school or mean kids. But there are people in my family. I really had a lack of support. The first time that I was hospitalized as an adolescent, the kind of mental health practitioner at the time told me and my mom that there was really no hope for me having a normal life and me being able to be and function in a normal school, go to a normal university, that we should, consider other options. So there's really an endless list, in my view at least, about why I'm the least likely. And the book literally ends with maybe the next least likely millionaire is you. Because I think there are a lot of other people that can implement some of the tactics, some of the ways of thinking that are in the book to create, a better life for themselves. And if that includes financial success, then that could be a great thing.
How did you overcome all that adversity?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure I've completely overcome everything, and like I've mentioned, it's definitely a work in progress. There was even one incident there. Each chapter in the book kind of begins with a kind of traumatic event. So, one of my jobs coming out of college was at a bank, and I was a branch manager, and the branch was robbed at gunpoint, and that was an interesting story I had. Another one was my bar mitzvah. And at my bar mitzvah, which is kind of a culminating event in my life, I didn't have a lot of friends. I was an only child. And my dad, who wasn't invited to the party because didn't get along with my mom, never gave money, anything like that, got up in front of the congregation, made a speech bad mouthing me, bad mouthing my mom in front of all the friends, family, had to be asked to leave the event. So these are things that, you don't leave you. What it's done is it's made me a better parent. So I have kind of done my best to reverse that cycle because I would never want my son for his whole life to feel like that. I have like really deep rooted trust issues. If I can't trust my own father, I mean, who can I trust? That's impacted my ability a lot of times to have healthy romantic relationships, healthy friendships, healthy lasting friendships. So I definitely wouldn't characterize anything at all or lie and say that I'm over anything. I have found very effective ways to live a much happier life through channeling the energy in positive ways. One of the things that I do is I really keep myself overwhelmed. For me, having things to keep my brain occupied on, whether that's multiple businesses, exercise throughout the day, having a regimented routine, having activities that I enjoy doing. The times that I get low and I get depressed and I start thinking about all things wrong is when my brain is not occupied. So, regardless of how much money I have, I don't see myself ever fully retiring. I'd love to work as an entrepreneur with my son at some point if that's something he's interested in, because I have the type of brain that needs to stay occupied, because when it's idle is when this kind of real negativity, this real serious negativity starts to creep in.
We don't talk about this, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's true of everyone. Idle
Yeah.
hands, right?
Yeah. It definitely could be. I can see that being the case. I mean, it may not be true of anyone that eventually, if you're idle enough, it'll lead to things like suicidal ideation, hopefully, like things it did for me. But yeah, I think and sometimes people don't like being overwhelmed. They have too much going on that they just have to drop everything and don't get anything done. For me, that sensation is positive. Sometimes it's stressful, but sometimes stress can be good. Not all stress, in my view, is bad.
No, I mean, and that's kind of why I asked you the questions about your son to begin with, is because that upbringing creates grit. And when you don't have it, then it just seems harder to raise kids and set them on the right path and so forth. And so there's this fine line between the two, and it's not always easy to walk. That's all.
Completely agree, and yeah, and I think I'm hoping that at least in my unique case that like you said, a 15-year-old boy is not going to like much that their parents have to say. Very good kid overall, very gifted athlete, very intelligent, but I'm hoping that when he gets, a lot of the things that I'm describing that happened in my life, like all these negative things in my childhood, like the thing at the bar mitzvah, like the fights or the name calling, didn't really have an impact on me until I became a more mature person. So I didn't really have a way of processing these things as a 13 or 14-year old, or I didn't recognize the gravity. Like, even though my dad was doing this such toxic stuff to me, and I should have ended that relationship because I feel like my life could have been better before that, I still loved my dad and I still wanted to be a part of my life because I just didn't recognize how truly toxic this behavior was until I became more of an adult and until I became more of a mature person.
If you live in a certain environment, that environment is the norm for you, regardless of what it is, right? That's just your normal. And if you haven't seen anything different or experienced it, then you wouldn't know. I mean, you could watch TV but that's all fantasy land, I guess.
Yeah.
So, what is the story behind your company, Single Swag? How did that all come to be?
Yeah, definitely love talking about that. So, and even the name Single Swag. I mean, a lot of people thought it's a joke when they hear about it. I sent it to some very successful like entrepreneurial incubators when I was starting it, and they thought it had to do with porn or something weird like that. But so it's the first and largest monthly subscription service for single women, and the way it came together was that I was kind of fledgling in my career. I had about a 10-year career in financial services. I went to undergrad at Florida State University, studied finance, but I really just did a lot of partying and drugs and drinking, and that was in a fraternity. About 10 years later, I went back to business school. Took it much more seriously. And a lot of the curriculum was based on these business case studies. And I did a school called FAU in Boca. And it was at a time where more of these direct to consumer recurring revenue companies were starting. So we did a case study on Birchbox. We did a case study on Netflix. And when I entered that program, I kind of had the idea that I wasn't happy with the trajectory of my career and I wanted to change that. So I thought that a lot of the jobs I was looking to apply for, required an advanced degree, required some type of graduate degree. So that was my plan. I never really thought of myself as a capable entrepreneur. I mean, I had no money. I had no one in my family that had ever been an entrepreneur. I had no kind of strategic advisors, anything like that. But when I learned about these businesses, something clicked in me and I wanted to start that type of company. And at the time, I became single very early in my son's life when he was around one, or I became divorced. His mom is still involved. But at this time, after I graduated from that program around 2015, I was a single dad. And I spent a lot of my time when I was with my son, like on Saturday night, at home with my son. I couldn't go out. I saw people out on social media, going out drinking, socializing. And I thought, I also hadn't been in a relationship in a while. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to get a gift? And wouldn't other single people who hadn't gotten a gift in a while perhaps like a gift as well? And I had this recurring revenue thing top of mind. And I did some research, and no one had a serious subscription service at the time that was marketed toward singles. I did some more research, and the way that these businesses were scaling was via social media. And a lot of them were creating or cultivating communities on Instagram. And the consumers for these products were primarily women. So when I first had the idea, I was thinking something for myself and for women. So I wasn't necessarily thinking just for women. But when I did that initial market research, I decided to focus on women. That was who was buying these products. And that's kind of the, uh, you know, first initial evolution of the business pre-revenue. And what I learned pretty quickly also is that more than half of the world and US population of adults is unmarried or single. This is a huge kind of available market, and more women are making more of a conscious decision to stay single longer. More people are divorced, obviously. So pretty quickly, I started to put it all together. I literally Googled what single women like. And I found multiple articles on, with gift lists, product lists. I started to get some of those products together, put up a website, and I was off really when the business started to become a serious situation is when I started to advertise on Facebook. And I think what's also unique about my story is that we've always done the digital advertising in house. And I took the spend myself, having no background, just kind of my own hustle, learning, watching a lot of videos, from $20 a day when I first started to over 10,000 a day consistently for 4 years, leading into the COVID-19 pandemic, when I'm spending 25, 30,000 a day, just because it became that much more favorable. And that was so much of a game changing time when we're shipping out 50,000 plus boxes a month. The business hasn't always sustained that level of success and growth as did at kind of its peak, but I'm glad to answer any more questions about that.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. You found a need based on what you wanted, and then you kind of adapted it to the market based on what the market wanted. You really don't have any competition at this point because no one else has kind of thought of this idea. I mean, it's not like you invented something, right? You took a concept and an idea and you test marketed it and saw what happened. And I mean, was it like hockey stick growth out at the beginning, or were there struggles in that whole process?
Yeah, I would agree that this was an existing space. What I would say, though, there was significant competition. I
Okay.
think what allowed us to scale in this kind of subscription box space is having that kind of differentiator. So that is what is unique, is having that kind of single differentiator. But it was hockey stick growth. So the first year, we did 450,000. The second year, we did over 5 million. The third year, we did over 10 million. The fourth year, which was 2019, did about 12. And then the peak of the business was in 2020 when I did just under 20 million profitably. And this was without ever raising money. And it was a top 200 company on the Inc. 5000. With some very other big names have been involved in that. So it was definitely hockey stick growth. It was also at a different time. I mean, I hear from a lot of, there's been some publicity about my story, about the success of my subscription box. So I hear now from people that are aspiring entrepreneurs that want to start a similar business. And I think at that time, or I know at that time in 2016, 2017, through really 2020, it was a much different digital advertising environment. It was much easier and much cheaper to acquire customers. The two biggest metrics in this type of business are the acquisition cost and the lifetime value of our customers. So how long we can automatically recharge them before they cancel. It's very transparent. They can cancel at any time, but as long as they don't cancel, we're going to automatically recharge them. And the dynamic that's changed since about early 2021 is that for all all e-commerce and subscription boxes in general is it's become much more expensive on these historic platforms to acquire customers. So for people that are looking to do this now, it takes some creativity. You might want to try to go viral on TikTok. You might want to try other forms of advertising, podcast advertising. There are things you can do, but I built it on a formula of primarily advertising on Facebook and Instagram. We definitely have a lot of email. We definitely do a lot of Google, but that really is what drove the growth. And there were some operational things that we did to improve the economics and the profitability of the business as we started to reach some pretty serious scale.
You actually did a lot. And you made a lot of tweaks in there, and you kept learning and changing and adapting to the environment. And I think what's happened in the world of social media is all the privacy stuff came out, and Apple cut essentially Facebook off from knowing who was who. Google's in the midst of changing their rules, so they're cutting people off left and right with cookies. And yeah, and that's part of the problem. When you build your sales on someone else's platform, you're beholden to someone else, right? And you're kind of stuck. And it's an ever changing marketplace. I know I deal with a lot of marketing agencies, and last year was a very difficult year for the industry because all the things that were working for the experts didn't work anymore. Either that or businesses were struggling or they weren't willing to spend. I, there's a whole variety of things, but I've noticed spending on marketing can very quickly drain a business.
Yeah, well, Rocky, you hit the nail on the head. Our kind of downturn in the business, or our decline in what we could spend based on the results we were getting, was in direct correlation to the rollout of the Apple iOS. I think it was like 14.1, and that was the serious privacy change. Facebook was aware. We were a serious Facebook advertiser. I mean, we had enterprise level account managers, domestic account managers that me and my team met with multiple times a week, and they knew this was coming, so they had some advance. But there wasn't anything that they could do, at least that I was given access to preempt this occurrence that would make it, still sustainable to spend the same amount. I wasn't a brand. There are some brands I knew at the time that had raised a lot of money that they weren't as concerned about profitability. I knew what our acquisition cost had to be, and at that 10,000 a day spend for 4 years, we were achieving that acquisition cost. If just to put in perspective, so at 10,000 a day in like 2018, 2019, we were getting a $50 to $60 acquisition cost for a subscriber. Today, in my opinion, if I were to spend 10,000 a day, it would probably be a $500 acquisition cost. That's how much this environment has changed and how difficult it is. And I think you're right. I think that's one challenge is in a lot of ways, this business was a one trick pony, for lack of a better word, that we were getting all of our website traffic from a single source. So if that source dries up, then where do you go? So that's really what I've been focused on. We still do advertise. That still is our primary channel. We still get a lot of business from that type of advertising. I have a lot of individual expertise in that platform that I've cultivated over these years, but we just can't spend the much. And with this type of business, it's like a leaky ship. So there's always a hole in the boat. You're always losing customers with churn. And for most of the time we were scaling with that hockey stick growth, I didn't care how many we were losing because we were gaining so many new subscribers. What's happened now is we've had multiple years where we've lost more than we've gained. So the business has gone from a $20 million business at its peak to now more of a $4 to $5 million business. So it's still a sustainable lifestyle business. We also do a lot more e-commerce orders now, so individual as opposed to subscriptions. We have a shop where items that have been in the boxes. We do specialty theme boxes, mystery boxes. So our model has changed along with some changes that have happened in the industry, and just trying to figure out new ways to get revenue and stay solvent.
And I think that's the key in business. You have to keep pivoting. I mean, that's just life. Um, Things constantly change, and if you're not watching and being proactive and keeping on top of it, it's not hard to get wiped out. And I think that's why so many businesses struggle. Uh, and actually, what I'm hearing lately with Facebook is don't even try to target anymore. They said just run your ads, and the Facebook algorithms will figure out based on who's responding. They've got their own internal psychographics or demographics that they can figure out just based on what they can see, not having the data anymore. Um, but again, whether it's true or not, I don't know. And when you're spending that kind of money every day, you have to make sure it's working.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. So what you're describing is called Advantage Plus. It's kind of a new kind of campaign style or campaign mode that Facebook released a couple of years ago. Now it's Meta; they go by Meta, but it really is essentially AI driven. So there's no targeting. There's really no exclusions, because we, in a lot of our advertising, we had a lot of exclusions based on data that we, so these are excluding different people that were into maybe a certain brand or made over a certain amount of money. We deal, we have sometimes more success with people that are more paycheck to paycheck, not people making over 300,000 a year. There were different, all these different ways to target, but that really is most effective for our business at this point is that Advantage Plus. It's very easy to set up also. So for people that are looking to test on Facebook, it used to be more of a cumbersome project to put together a Facebook account structure when I was like in my heyday of doing this, like 2018, 2019, 2020, where now it's simple because there's really not much you do besides upload the ads, maybe some different pieces of advertising copy, and make sure you have a pixel in place and kind of go from there.
Were there big mistakes along the way? Did you have help? Like,
Yeah, huge mistakes. I would say one of the biggest mistakes that comes to mind is that I really wanted to model my brand after some other brands that were out there. And when we started to get some notoriety, when we started to achieve some of these higher revenues, 5 million plus revenue, 10 million plus revenue, became a target of very aggressive solicitations from marketing agencies, different tools, all these business to business sales type situations. And there was a company that I lost over $1 million with. This is all my own money. I've never had investors in this business. So when I talk about it, it's that where they marketed themselves as having worked with some of our competitors. So a company like FabFitFun, which is a very well-funded, very big subscription box that's actually pivoted to a number of different areas now outside of subscription, including, venture funding, warehousing, things like that. But they worked with these companies, and they had a different way of advertising that made it more effective and that could help us get to the next level of scale. And, I didn't really understand it as well as I should have. Part of what I tell people that are looking to start a digital marketing business is that there's really a lot of value, even if you know nothing about it, in doing it yourself at first, or at least learning the foundational elements of it. Because then if you do get to a scale where you want to work with third parties and they're talking to you, you understand what they're talking about. They can't play sales games. They can't, tell you things that aren't accurate. They can't fudge the numbers, so to speak. But so I made mistakes by engaging in relationships where we spent and really burned through a lot of money with companies like that. I made mistakes with products we put in the box. It's very important in this business to remain neutral. Towards about the maybe second year in the business, when we're shipping out well over 10,000 boxes a month, we include books often in the box. And we included a book from a celebrity that we were able to get very discounted. But the celebrity happened to be very overtly outspoken politically. And I had no idea. This was not something that I paid attention to in any way. And we literally got immediate emails when people started to receive those boxes that included videos of a bonfire in their front yard, of lighting the book on fire. That how could we partner with such an individual like this? Like such a polarizing thing that was a learning experience for me, because obviously we need to be more careful about vetting, what goes in the box. And you have to be careful about the sizing. I mean, the people that receive these boxes get the same thing. So this is women of different skin tones. So you have to have neutral shades, different neck sizes. So we do jewelry. So the necklaces and the bracelets have to have extenders to fit all different types of shapes and sizes. So, learned a lot. There's more funny stories like that. And then personally, I think it's kind of relevant because you're asking about the financial related topics. Having gone from having no money my entire life to having some pretty serious money, I made some personal decisions that weren't the best, thinking that I was going to be able to sustain. There was a point in this business where I was making 400,000 to 500,000 a month consistently. That was my take home from the business, 400,000 to 500,000 a month for multiple months. And I've made a lot of money over the course of the business, but I'm not really taking a lot of money from it now. And I bought things. I invested. People started to come with me with deals and different deals that they had available that I thought I didn't vet as well as I should have. So there's been a lot of learning, and this whole thing is just been a big learning experience. It's been the most exciting time in my life. I wouldn't trade it for anything, and I definitely have made an effort to really be thoughtful and learn from these mistakes and try not to beat myself up. It's really pretty crazy because I would say that I've been able to stay even keeled. There have been people in business that have screwed me over, that have, in my opinion, stolen money, ordered product, not delivered product, been involved in some very light legal activity at times. I can take that in stride. When it comes to my son and when it comes to my family, that's where I have more trouble keeping it together. So I found that in my life, that from a business perspective, and I actually have the confidence that I could lose everything I have at this point. And now that I know that I've done this, I could do it again. That I don't think that's going to happen, but something has changed in me, my way of thinking, that I had the capability to build companies, to help other people build companies, to pay attention to what's happening and trying to use some of this advertising skill, technical copywriting skill. So everything is just a big learning experience, and it still is. There's still stuff. I feel like I'm going on forever, but one important thing is that I've really learned, the other thing that I wasn't as focused on during the hyper growth stage is the economics. So I wasn't as concerned about little costs here, little costs here. Now that there's been a downturn or a decline in the revenue of the business, a pretty significant one from where we were, I really do need to pay attention to these things. I need to be aware and need to be a more frugal business owner and make sharper choices to try to sustain this and sustain my livelihood for as long as possible.
And I think that was kind of one of my big ahas in the world of business is that things don't last forever, right? Just because you're doing well today doesn't mean you will tomorrow. And I think people think this is easy, but if you look at, I think was it 2022 or maybe it was 20 the beginning parts of 2023, all massive companies, we're talking Nike, Peloton, they all thought that what was happening during COVID was going to not like they thought demand had permanently changed. It had not, right? It changed for a period and then things change again.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, I thought the same way. I mean, I would never compare myself to Fortune 100 huge brands like that, but I was on an absolute high. I mean, particularly during COVID, we just saw, and it was a time when I had to even be a little more quiet about it because a lot of companies and a lot of other business owners I knew that had more businesses that required being somewhere physically, restaurants, hotels, properties, apparel brands weren't doing as well and were struggling and were terminating employees. I was adding staff. We were growing at an incredibly high clip that we had to adjust our kind of model so we didn't sell out. We essentially did sell out, but then we introduced a welcome box. And yeah, I bought a boat. I bought really fancy cars. I started to do things because I thought, and I will say, if that would have lasted forever, if that growth trajectory would have lasted forever, I would have sold this company for an obscene amount of money and probably be, taking this interview from a boat instead of in my home office. But it is what it is. I've definitely learned this is not going to be the only company I have in my life, and my hope is that I can kind of steer this as carefully as possible to sustain this business because I don't think anyone knows what the future holds. There could be another event that creates a more favorable dynamic in digital advertising. There could be a situation that comes up. I don't hope there's another pandemic. I don't hope that society is afflicted by that. But that event happened to be very positive for me, my business, my family, all that stuff. I don't know if we're in a different economic environment. I don't know what happened. So, I'm just trying to keep my head above water with the hope that this variable of digital advertising that really fueled the aggressive growth in the business can maybe come back at some point.
Or you keep the same concept, but maybe it's a new market or something else or whatever. You mentioned something earlier, and that was kind of interesting. There's all these competitors, but when they're VC backed and when they have, um, I'm not going to say unlimited funds, but significant funds, I find they don't spend money appropriately. Like they're okay losing until they can win. As a matter of fact, Uber just announced for the first time in 16, I don't know when they started, 15, 16 years, that they were profitable. Companies like Uber might be able to get away with that, but little business owners can't go negative for that kind of time and survive. And yet, but the problem is if you have to compete against that, you're in trouble because they do silly. And you sit there and you scratch your head and you're like, how is this possible? It's because they're doing silly.
Yeah, definitely dealt with that dynamic. Fortunately, during the growth period, it just seemed to me like because these companies, the venture backed ones, are biggest competitors. were doing the same type of advertising. I mean, that's the type of advertising that's effective for these companies, whether they're big or small. And there was room for us. They weren't there. There would have been a lot more room. They were obviously had much bigger budgets, that type of thing. But they've kind of seen a similar downturn, a similar, valuation. I mean, I read recently that one point, Birchbox, which is another company in the space, had a multi-billion-dollar valuation, and they were raising money on a multi-billion-dollar valuation. I think they were sold to a private equity firm within the past 12 months for around 40 million, or a valuation of around 40 million. So it just really, you never know, and I would have to think that a lot of people who invested, in that, lost money. And that's kind of, even I did. I made some of those. I mentioned private equity investments at a time before there was somewhat of an economic downturn, thinking that these are going to be short term. There was going to be a liquidity event potentially, and they were going to pay off. But that hasn't happened yet. And we've really moved away from an environment where a lot of that activity was taking place. And I was even involved in a deal to sell this business at its kind of peak that died because the private equity group that was providing the financing backed away from any company that was advertising on Facebook and social media, because they could see the writing on the wall that that was starting to shift, not in the advertiser's favor. So it's unfortunate, but it could be worse. I'm happy to be involved. It's still a great lifestyle business for me, but I agree with you. It's even harder to compete. And I think what, that company I mentioned, it's just a lot of these companies in this space, in the digital, acquisition, direct to consumer space. If they have a lot of money, if they have a lot of smart money, if they have a lot of resources, they've pivoted. And like you've said, they've gone into other verticals, whether it's another product or whether it's this one business that was exclusively a subscription box is now a 3PL, or a third party warehouse, is now a fund for, venture, is now doing other things that, because they had that money, because they had these strategic investors, they were able to do that. I've only had just me. I've really made all the strategic decisions, and I definitely haven't been right. And what I even say in the book is that I don't even know if I think, I did that because I have trust issues, because I, didn't want other people involved, because I didn't think they were going to actually have my best interests in mind. My first employee was my mother, who I know I can unconditionally trust. But if I would have brought in people, if I would have been willing to bring in people from these competitors that had helped them grow, that do this, my company could have been at another level, and we could have sold it, and I could have had a totally different outcome than I ended up with. So you can look at it both ways.
It is. Everything always looks good on the other side, right? The grass is always greener. It doesn't always happen that way, though, is the reality of it. So, you know what? You did it on your terms. You got to do it your way. You didn't have to deal with people that you didn't want to deal with. And hey, that's okay. There's nothing at all wrong with that, you know?
I appreciate it.
It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Wow, that's a good question. I wish I had that one in advance. I would say having a healthy obsession, kind of what I described, that always keeping my brain occupied on things that benefit my life, being obsessed with the business, being obsessed with exercise, being obsessed with the routine, having things to focus on is what, leads to an abundant life for me.
You know, it's funny. I could have retired and not done anything, but I find my life would not be good. So I continue to do what I love because it keeps everything else in check. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Not to care as much about what other people think. So I've spent a lot of my life, and still do, not as much so, fortunately, but really being focused and making decisions based on what other people thought. Some that were important in my life, some that weren't. But I wish I would have realized that sooner.
You have to figure it out for yourself. Everyone, I mean, everyone is selfish. Okay. Let's just admit it. We all do what's in our best interest, not necessarily in somebody else's best interest. And in business, I think that that is very much the case, which is why you dealt with so much of what you had to deal with. They all think they have the solution. I get emailed all day long about how they're going to do all these wonderful things for me, and I just ignore it. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Start now. Uh, you know, do just act, just do what you need to do. If you need to make money, get a job, have a side hustle. I feel like I didn't start my company until I was in my late 30s, and now I'm in my kind of approaching my mid 40s, and I think that's a testament to, it's never too late. I've read recently about people starting in their 50s, 60s, multi-billion-dollar brands like Red Bull, things like that. But I would say start early. And something else I thought of while I was saying that is be vulnerable. So I think that I would encourage people like my son to become a TikTok creator, to be more active on Instagram Reels. And I think a lot of people are embarrassed. They don't want to do that. They're not willing to put themselves out there on social media. And there's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of traction that can be gained from that. And also by being vulnerable, with your friends, with your family, what you want to achieve, you never know who can help you out. You never know who, is willing to help you achieve your goals. I'm a mentor to multiple young people, and if they don't ask for help, it's not going to come.
So true. And it's funny because here you are telling a 15-year-old to get on social media, but it's not just don't be a consumer, be a producer. And I was the same way with my son when he likes to play video games. I'm like, play all you want, go win money. And he did. And it's a
No.
win-win.
I'll have to learn about that from you because mine loves to play video games, but I haven't heard about
Oh,
any money making opportunities.
there are tons of money making
Okay.
opportunities, both in entering competitions and is a B. Actually, there's schools that give scholarships now for esports,
Hmm.
and then C, creating a following. It's one way to create a following is people
Sure.
who are good at the gaming. And it's funny because at the end of your book, you actually talk about this. Every single day, you have the option to sit on the sofa and watch TV or social media, or you can go out and do something. And that's a choice we all make. If people would like to learn more about you in the book, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. So the book is available pretty much everywhere where books are sold online. So it's on Amazon in hardcover, paperback. There's an audiobook, barnesandnoble.com. I also have a website where you can have a link to buy the book and learn more about some other things I'm involved in, consulting, helping out businesses. That's Jonathan, Jonathan, Beskin.com. Or you could follow me and DM me on Instagram at jbeskin, and I'd be happy to connect with any or all of the listeners.
We'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so
Great.
much for joining us today.
Rocky, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Do you have to overcome more or less than Jonathan did? What's holding you back? What are you going to do about it? Listen to the world or yourself in your dreams? As for me, I vote for the latter. Let's go make it happen. By the way, who do you know who might enjoy this episode? Needs to hear the message? I'd appreciate it if you'd share it with them. Thanks for doing that. Next week, we've got Chrissy Myers on to talk about how to be resilient. Because at the end of the day, as long as you keep showing up, you'll never lose. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.